Hey, this is Nomad, host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast. Why do they call me Nomad? Well, I traveled the globe, spreading the joy of music one song at a time. And now I bring you wisdom, tried and true knowledge, and life experiences of my colleagues and peers in this crazy business we call music. On this episode of the Career Musician Podcast, we have Nate Morton, a.k.a. Nate Drums from The Voice.
This is the Career Musician Podcast with your host, Nomad.
Okay, so you start out on TV as a rock star drummer. Where do you go from there? Well, you just keep on doing the same thing and blowing up even more. Who remembers Rockstar INXS or Rockstar Supernova? Well, if you do, then you've seen and heard Nate Morton, a.k.a. Nate Drums, jam out on that show several times. And then, as if that weren't enough TV drumming mania, the dude goes and lands the gig with The Voice. Look, I can't even list the artists he's played with. If I did, we would be here for 5 hours. The list is ridiculous. He's drummed for everybody in every scenario on every planet known to man and beyond. Check it out. Nate Drums from The Voice, the drummer extraordinaire, and I'm sure so many other things. I'm sure you're not just a drummer. Well, welcome to the Career Musician here with myself. I'm so glad to be breaking bread and sitting down and talking to you.
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's. I know we're pressed for time, so I want to organize this kind of nicely. Let's give me a brief history of why you started banging things for a living.
That's sort of it was a confluence of influences.
Yeah.
So basically, Animal from the Muppets sort of made me realize, like, oh, okay, it's okay to be, a hyper spaz as long as you can channel it towards something like this. And so that's what I sort of modeled that. And then my parents went to Tennessee State University, which is a historically black college university.
Of course.
And I would go and I would see their marching band when I would go to their football games. And so that was always thrilling for me. So
something about the marching band, it's infectious, isn't it?
Oh, sure.
When you're right there, close up. Yeah.
Well, especially if you're like a little kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I can't even really point to a specific thing. I just know that it connected with me. Right. And I know that drums always connected to me with me, even from an early age, because everything else sounded like what I want to say is notes. Like and the drums are like so like the drums like stuck out from that, you know what I mean? Even awesome. And that always was the case. That continued to be the case even as I got older, and my dad was into, well, you might call it today sort of smooth jazz, but he'd play maybe Grover Washington Jr. or he'd play something like that. And even that, do, or, there's a sax playing the melody, and the drums were always like, and just that texture.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, that not the stagnant, but the motion.
Absolutely. Point of fact, I was a hyper kid. Like if I was born, in this day and age, all sorts of doctors would have tried to put me on all sorts of medications. You know what I mean? Right. And so I'm very fortunate that I found drums, and drums became my outlet for that level of hyperactivity. That's awesome. And even, it's interesting, I had a kid once when I was teaching, and he came in one day, and it was a better lesson than he had ever had, right? It was a better lesson than he had ever had. Young kid, he might have been, I'm going to say he was maybe 10, 11, something like that. And I just remember like, wow, he seems so much more alive today, and he's really much more in tune to the instrument, and he's really, getting the stuff that I'm throwing at him today more than ever. And his mom came and picked him up, and she apologized to me, and she said, "I'm really sorry. I hope Will was okay today." And I go, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, we forgot his medication, so he's been a little, hyper today." And it really in that moment struck me how fortunate I was, because I literally told her, I was like, today was his best lesson. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, when I look back on it, I think potentially how much less engaged I would have been with music with the
right.
drums had that happen. And I look at a kid like Will and I go, oh man,
Poor little,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I don't know. I didn't mean to.
No, I love that.
Dark there for a moment.
I love that.
In my case, my medication was drums.
That's beautiful.
And I would go in my room and I would play for hours a day, just play the songs. And
well, we all know music is so therapeutic.
It completely is.
It's beautiful. So when did you come to LA and really start pursuing music as a career?
I moved to LA, which is, by the way, tied for the second best thing that I ever did for my musical career. Moving to LA and attending Berklee College of Music. Those are the two best things I ever did for to advance my career. I used to say moving to LA was the second best and going to Berklee was the first, but I realized that one can't really exist without the other. Like, you know what I'm saying? If I had just gone to Berklee and stayed there, I don't think I'd be fortunate to do the things that I'm fortunate to do. Conversely, if I had just moved to LA, I don't think I would have had the same skill set. To be
we'll get to that soon. Yeah.
So I moved to LA in '98, if memory serves. And when I moved here, it was funny because I would bump into people and I would go, yeah, how long have you lived in LA? And they would say, oh man, I've been here for about 5 years. I've been here for like 6 years. And that seemed so long. Like, because I was here for like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And I would just think, wow, that seems so long. And now I've been here just about 20 years.
That's awesome.
and it's gone by like that.
Yeah,
but it's been a great ride and I've really enjoyed it. It
does, man. Yeah. All right, so let's jump right into it.
Hit me.
I noticed your social media.
Okay.
And the way you're explaining things and breaking down your daily routine on the show.
Okay.
I also noticed some of the wisdom nuggets that you're tossing out there to the next generation of aspiring professionals in our industry. Talk to me about some of your core principles and methods for being a career musician. Because look, you don't land a gig like you've landed, and all the other gigs that you've landed, by accident. Sometimes chance plays a part. Sometimes luck, but we know that luck is just when preparation meets opportunity, right? So your core principles and methods that you adhere to.
It's not, unfortunately, I don't have anything necessarily deep or profound. It's very, very simple. I mean, for me, very early in my career, I was advised to listen to as much music as I possibly could, right? And to play as much music as I possibly could with as many different people as I possibly could. And that's just always been what I've tried to do. And it sort of led, to this gig where from week to week, day to day, we'll go from a pop R&B ballad to a country song to a classic rock song to, whatever, to an orchestral arrangement of something. And so I think that it served me well to sort of approach it that way. And then in terms of gigs that I've sort of pursued or that I've sort of been involved in, historically, I've chosen gigs or I've sought gigs based on liking the music, liking the people in the band. There are times when I toured or played in bands with people because, like I said, because I liked them or because I enjoyed the music or because I enjoyed the atmosphere, and turned down gigs that might have paid more or that might have, you know what I'm saying? That might have quote unquote advanced my career. I mean, I've always erred on the side of trying to choose gigs that I found enjoyable. And the reason I've done that is because I feel like if you choose gigs, like I've known people who've chosen gigs based on, I'll meet this person on that gig. Or I've known people who've assembled bands based on, let me call this guy, and this guy, because in turn they may call me for this. Whereas whenever anyone's ever asked me to put together a band, I think, who are my friends? Like, who are my boys? Who can I hook up with a good situation right now?
The relationships that you have, and it's really a nice positive.
It's really about that for me. And the reason why is because, at the end of the day, I always thought about it this way. I always felt like I'm going to wind up on some situation somewhere doing something. I'm going to be playing. I want it to be in a happy situation that I really like. So even if it takes me longer, because I don't politic. I can't really politic. I don't know how to really do it. It feels icky.
It was really easy to get in touch with you.
Sure.
And that is a sign of not politicking, which is a good thing.
Yeah. And I just find it takes too much energy. It's just too much energy. I can't be bothered. I just kind of, I don't even know. I just feel my way much more organically and much less calculatedly. I don't think that's the word.
It's appreciated.
Yeah, and so all of that boils down to sort of where my musical philosophy is. Basically, the idea that I always wanted to be exposed to as much, with all due respect to players who are highly specialized. You know, when I was in school, I knew, dudes who just played jazz, and they were really good. And I realized that, to an extent, I'm making a little bit of a sacrifice, because I know that the reason why they're that way is because their 8 hours a day of practice is on that, whereas mine is split between 10 different things. So I know I'm not going to be there, but like I said, it was always my priority to be, the versatile.
I love it because it was mine as well. Right?
Yeah.
I knew at the young age of like probably 14 that I wanted to be a session cat. And nobody knew what that was, right? And all your friends were like, what do you mean? I'm sure you experienced the same thing.
Sure.
John Powell, film composer, I interviewed him for this podcast, and he put it like this. He said, because I asked him, I said, have you ever been afraid of, serving too many masters? Jack of all trades, master of none, right?
Sure.
He said his father told him, be careful of that. You better master one thing. Instead, he became one of LA's biggest film composers by mastering the amalgam of many things. That's the way he put it. All these different things that we're picking from on a daily basis, practicing and then playing and then with different people. So I love that. So versatility is a tried and true principle.
Absolutely.
I always like to say methods change constantly, especially with technology, but the principles always remain the same, right? So I love that. Versatility, down-to-earth personality, because let's face it, we're off stage longer than we're on stage.
Absolutely.
So if
that's a good point,
right? If
that's
you don't
connect, not a lot of people realize that, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and ego really just can't come into play.
Right. It's funny. I got a buddy who said to me, we really must love music, because basically we'll go out, we'll tour in a van and a trailer, and move our gear, and deal with like crappy club owners trying to rip us off, cold pizzas that they get for, after show meals, and we do all of that to get on stage and do what we do for 45 minutes. We deal with all that other stuff to get on stage for what we do for 45 minutes.
For cold pizza and warm beer backstage.
Right.
So it almost seemed like your touring kind of slowed down, and then you obviously have done a lot of session work here in town, and then the TV show picked up. You've been on the show for seasons.
Wow, we've got to be. Yeah, we literally 2 days ago just completed the finale for season 15. And it's doing, we do 2 cycles a year. Right. So 15 seasons has fit into about almost 8 years. Okay. I think probably a little over 70 or something like that.
Amazing. So that's where I want to focus for your episode. And I'm sorry we got there.
You're all good. You're all good.
But basically, studio etiquette has always been a big thing for me. And I think younger musicians coming up might not always have that studio etiquette, especially when they have their fresh chops from Berklee or MI or wherever, right? Or maybe they're just young and inexperienced in certain ways. They don't know how to communicate effectively with others in the booth, in the band, or especially the producer. So let's talk about studio etiquette for you. It's our job to facilitate what the producer is going for. Right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's interesting. You said studio. A buddy, Reggie Hamilton. You know Reggie Hamilton.
Absolutely.
Great bass player.
Incredible.
He said that when he's in the studio, it's important. He said of studio recording, it's important to play what is right for the music, and only ever hint that you can do more. You know what I mean?
Well said.
You know what I mean? Only ever hint that you can do more. In other words, it's like how many times have we been in situations with drummers where we tend to be the worst offenders, where they say, okay, give me this there, okay, okay, give me the time, okay, give me everything, and it becomes like drum solo extraordinary, and it's like, no, that's not helpful.
That's not going to work for
the
song.
I need some time and some simple fills so I can hear what it sounds like in the mix,
What it would be for the song.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm as guilty as that, as anyone.
I think we've all
I couldn't wait.
moments.
I couldn't wait to be on stage and with sound check, and they go, okay, give me everything. I go, yeah.
What is it, like sneakers in a dryer?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So that'd be one thing that I've sort of picked up. But I mean, generally speaking, if you're in the studio and if you're recording, obviously in most situations, you are there to serve the song and essentially bring the artist or the producer's vision to life. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And it's interesting because in my experience, that happens in all manner of ways. I've been on situations in the studio where it is pretty specifically dictated to me what they want. You know that Phil where you go ba-ba-do-do-da-ga-do crash and you hit the crash on the right? Yes. Can you do it where you go ba-ba-do-do-da-ga-do crash and hit the crash on your left? My cynical internal voice goes, right, that's going to be the difference in this being a hit or not. But then I go, no, take that hat off, you little cynical jerk. You say, absolutely. Because that's what you want. Sure. I don't have to know why you want it.
The answer,
my job is to...
The credo is the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
Right?
And then by the same token, I've been on sessions where they'll go, okay, hey Nate, we're getting it together in here. You just take a pass down. Okay, fine. You blow it down once, and they go, okay, you're good. And you go, wait, what?
Yeah, right?
Are you sure? They go, no, dude, that sounded great.
That sounded great.
And you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll be going then.
Especially when it's all union and labels and
sure.
and the pay doesn't change, right?
And it's just I've learned to have my mind very open when I walk into a session, particularly if I'm working with people that I've not worked with before, because it could go either one of those 2 ways. I've been in situations where I'm sound checking a snare drum for 90 minutes while they're A, B, C, D'ing a million different mics and positions, and it's a half an inch this way, a half an inch that way, and I'm doing it for 90 minutes, and then it's the time of the same thing, and then I've been in other situations where I'll sit down and I'll go, okay, what do you want first? You want the rack tom? And they'll go, are you ever gonna play the rack tom only by itself? And I go, no. And they go, okay, well then just give me some time. And I go, okay, and then I do that. You know what I mean? And it takes 4 minutes flat for them to get the drum sounds, because that's what they're looking for. And so it's interesting in that situation because obviously under a microscope you may hear a rattle in a floor tom, and you may go, and you may spend half an hour trying to figure out what it is and putting tape on this and tightening that and doing this and that and the other. Whereas in the other situation you might go, well, it's rattling, but amidst the whole sound of the whole mix and things, you're never going to hear that.
Never going to hear it.
So let's go. And I've had both results come out great, and I've had both results not work. I've had results from both rather, be really great, and I've had results come out and go like, So I've done times where people have taken 2 hours to get drum sounds, and then I hear the final product and I go, those drums don't sound that good.
Right. So the lesson is just to be flexible.
Yeah.
Whichever way they want you to go, you just have to learn how to just go with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And circling back to your question in terms of etiquette, yes, it is your job in the studio to navigate whatever that situation is. Right. If it's 2 hours to get drums, if it's 2 minutes to get drums, if it's individually tom sounds, if it's play the whole kit. But at the end of the day, like I said, and again, circling even further back, the thing that I don't want to do is ever sort of be there for me. Like,
just gonna ask
and don't get me wrong, if they say, Nate, what do you hear here? Oh, I'm all about suggestions.
Yes.
I'm all about let's try this, let's try that. I'm all about like, hey, you know what? I did a pass where I went to the ride on the chorus. Let me do a pass where I go to open hats instead.
That's right.
Hey, I did a pass to the bridge where I'm like just kick drum. Let me do a pass where I add the toms to that. Right. So I'm all about contributing, but you have to be able to contribute, unless it's a band. Right. Where you can fight with your band members and go, no, man,
that's different.
I hear this here.
Yeah.
But if you're there as a session guy, you have to be able to contribute without ego.
I was just going to ask you opinions, and that's it.
Yeah.
When again, I feel like I've witnessed myself so many times where other musicians have misspoken or spoken out of place, meaning they're offering their opinion or they're strongly voicing something when they shouldn't be.
And when I get in situations like that, I mean, and it happens. It's funny, this band on the show, Sasha, Paul, and myself have played together since 2005. We were the rhythm section of a show called Rockstar, INXS on CBS.
That's where I first saw you. Yes,
so
I remember
we played together for a long time. So short of having releases of original music, we're a band. Like literally, that's the only thing that separates us. We are as much a band as 21 Pilots, as Imagine Dragons, whatever. We are as much a band as that, short of releasing original music, right? So we get in fights, and we argue, and, you know, things happen like that.
But that's internally with...
Sure.
Right.
But if it's a session, sometimes I just have to kind of do a thing where I go, look, let me give you this. If you like it, use it. If you don't, fine. And I'm okay with it. Right. If you hear it and you go, that's totally the part. Groovy. And if you hear it and go, nah, that ain't the thing. Okay. I have a couple of like side projects. I have an album that I did with myself and a buddy ages ago. Super talented guy named Sean Halley. He's one of the most talented people that I've ever known in my entire life. Nice. But he basically, we co-worked an album together. Like basically I had ideas and then he made those ideas into like realities. And I had other musicians on it, but it was primarily Sean and I. And what that album was born out of was, at the time, I was kind of frustrated because I was being told, you know, okay, that's too rocking. Okay, that's too funky. Okay, no, you can't do that here. Okay, you can't do this here. Okay, not that. And so I was like, you know what? I need an outlet because I want a project where I can just do whatever I want to do and with no limitations.
There you go.
And so that was what that album was born of. And it's interesting because in more recent history, I did a record with a buddy named Kenwood Anderson, which was the same thing. It was basically like him going, hey, I've got these tunes. Here's the context. You know, here's the medium. Go and do what you want to do.
Right.
And, you know, it was like, oh, wow, okay.
That's fun.
And then even more recently, I'm actually working I have a band with the same guy from album 1 from a while back, Sean Halley, my buddy
nice,
and I.
Nice.
We have a record of instrumental, I don't want to call it, I hesitate to call it fusion because ultimately we are both pop, mainstream guys at heart.
Okay.
So it's sort of pop fusion, if that's a thing.
Right, sure.
It's instrumental and there's solos, but at the end of the day, the tunes do still tend to get sort of anthemic. If that makes any sense.
That's good.
You know?
That means there's melody present.
There's definitely melody. It is definitely not. It's a very accessible. Let's put it that way. It's a very accessible fusion record.
And that's
perfect. What I mean?
That's perfect.
And so we're working on that. We literally. He's just been finishing some final mixes of it, and it's going to mastering. So all of that to say, the studio animal is one thing when essentially your job is there, your job is to be there to serve the vision of someone else, typically.
That's right.
And then it's nice to have the balance of having your thing where it's like, I get to do whatever I want to do here.
Right.
I can play whatever I want here. Right. You know? So yeah, no, it's a nice balance.
Those are the fun moments that help balance out the
Absolutely.
other focused.
I will say this too. I realized really early that I really enjoy playing songs. I really enjoy playing songs. And
good trait to have.
You know what I mean? And more specifically, I enjoy playing pop songs. I like intro, verse, chorus, 16-bar solo, bridge, breakdown chorus. How bad would it be if I didn't on the gig that I'm on? Woo!
Well, you wouldn't have the gig.
What? That's true.
That's the whole point. And that's one of the reasons why I feel it's so important to do this. This is surely a labor of love that I do with a career musician. People need to hear this. If you want to do this for a living, then guess what? You're going to have to identify the tools of the trade and play ball the way you.
It's funny.
Accordingly,
we do so many songs on the show, and I would be lying if I sat here and said I absolutely love every single song on the show.
Of course,
come on, don't be silly. We played 3,000 songs, maybe more.
I would say probably more. Yeah,
maybe more.
Yeah.
You know, we've played thousands of songs, so obviously I don't fall in love with every single song. However, I will say, I generally find something to latch onto in every song. I find some sort of motivation. I find some sort of vibe or whatever it is to put me in the right mindset to find something enjoyable about playing.
That's right.
Basically every song. You know, I'm almost never sitting there playing. Like it could be the most bubblegummy, pop, dancey, and that's fun. I just put myself in that mode.
Yeah,
like how bubblegummy and poppy can I make this? You know what I mean? Let's take it to the extreme. And so I find that. Yeah. I find that motivating, and I find that helps me when, again, like navigating all the different things that we do.
That's right. You make it as bubblegummy, poppy as you can when you're in that mode. Listen, musicians, career musicians out there, I know a lot of times we're like, oh man, yeah, I got this gig with so-and-so, but I don't like doing that. I'd rather be doing this. Really? You're a musician, a career musician, and you're gonna complain about the type of gig you got? Man, that is ridiculous. I have no tolerance for that kind of behavior. Whatever gig you're on, treat it as the most important one you've ever played. Take it from Nate Morton himself, who's played on thousands of TV broadcast shows, broadcast to millions of people all over the world. You heard him. How many songs has he played? I mean, it's way more than 3,000. Trust me. Between all the shows he's done, listen, be grateful.
Add the career musician to your playlist.
So when the producers and the directors and the director's assistants, and they're on the headset and okay, here we go, rolling, and and you know that, hey, this when that red light hits on TV, it's a lot different. I mean, look, the red light in the studio is serious.
Of course,
you don't want to screw that up,
right?
But on TV, it seems like there's even another level of intenseness because the money is so much at stake, right?
Well, for me, I find that
I don't mean the money for us. I mean like the money involved in the production.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, I find that it's interesting when I'm recording in the studio, whether or not the artist's, how can I put this? Whether or not that artist's path ends there isn't really reliant upon me. I'm playing the drum part, they're going to come back, you're going to come track guitars, you're going to put down 12 tracks of guitars, they're going to come sing it, they're going to do over, they're going to do that. When I'm playing on the show, if I blow something or if I play something that causes an artist to go to the wrong section of a song or lose where they are, or I don't lead them into a section, or I forget to play the the snare drum thing on 4 that they're expecting to hear, and they mess up, then I kind of, a little bit of that can be on me, and I can go, ooh. And it's particularly evident in, like, I don't know how many people who are listening to this are fans or follow the show The Voice, but the first part of the season is the blind auditions. And they come out and they're singing, essentially, for their chance to be on the show. Yeah. And so it's funny because whatever amount of nerves or anticipation or anxiety that they may have, I sort of feel that. Like, I sort of feel kind of tense too. I don't, it doesn't cause me to play with more tension, but it does cause me to realize, like, oh, more is on the line. I'm not playing a cover gig right now.
No, of course.
In a bar, in Northridge.
You recognize
I'm playing and this person
the importance
is relying on this performance. So, by that same token, when I do start to think about that, I do, like my drum tech will tell you, I write breathe on my drum head, on my snare drum head, because I can get in my own head and sort of forget to breathe.
I love that.
So I always have to remind myself, like, okay, here we go.
And it's okay if you do that several times throughout.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant reminder.
That's
constant
beautiful.
Reminder. Yeah.
Excellent.
So
all right, so now we covered touring, we covered studio, we covered being on set.
By the way, once someone wrote me when we were doing Rockstar, and I never really realized it. And generally speaking, I'm more concerned with the artist on stage than I am the potentially millions of people watching the show. Like, I'm more concerned about them doing well. I'm not necessarily getting nervous because I'm thinking, oh man, like, millions of people are seeing this. I'm getting nervous because I'm like, wow, I really feel for this contestant. I really hope that they do well. And so it's funny, I'm almost always able to be in that mindset. One time someone wrote me a note, though. They wrote me an email. And it said something along the line. It was very nice, very, very nice email. And it said, good job on the show, and blah, 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 blah. Just remember, what did it say? It said, just remember, the entire community of drummers is counting on you. Or something along those lines.
Now, that's interesting.
I was like, because what they meant was, given the profile of the gig.
Sure. Yes.
And so if I do it poorly, it reflects poorly. In that moment, I was reminded, like, wow, if I mess up, a lot of people hear it.
Conversely, I don't think a lot of people even know when musicians messed up. We know it, and sometimes we beat ourselves up over it, right?
Yeah. Well, what happens to me, I find, is, I find that unless you can see the person and they pull a funny mug when they mess something up, which I do, but fortunately the camera doesn't always catch it. But what happens a lot of the time is that, you know, as musicians, maybe you've experienced this as well. You know, like, you play something and it doesn't come off as what you wanted it to be, but what did come off was cool. It was fine. Cool, right. It was fine. But because it's not the idea you wanted, you're kind of like, shucks, didn't nail that. But no one else knows what you meant to play.
Exactly. There you go. All right, so we covered all these things. Now, this is leading into how you're transitioning from the TV set to the studio to facilitate getting all this music rehearsed and then recorded and then back to the set to be performed.
Correct.
Okay. Just walk us through that process real quick. I love what you're doing, you know, on your posts. So
you got it. In terms of our schedule on the show, you mean?
Yeah, how intense it is.
Well,
for you funny. As one of the role members.
Sure.
You know what I'm trying to say.
Right. The band members. Right.
Thank you.
So some of the show is very some of the scheduling of the show is very humane, and it's almost like normal. Like a normal person with a normal job. So for example, if it's just the band rehearsing and we have to learn songs for, you know, blind auditions. Yeah. Well, our band rehearsals might just be 2 weeks, Monday through Friday. We show up, we blast through, say, 20 songs a day. And for us at this point, due to the fact that some of the material we've already played, as well as we're playing, you know, 2-minute versions of songs, we're not playing 7-minute opuses. We can blast through 20 songs in 3.5 hours.
It's beautiful.
You know, 3.5 hours, 4 hours. So those days are very humane.
It's a light day, yeah.
Yeah. However, the most intense time of the show is what we just completed, which is the final weeks, which is usually about 6 or 7 weeks leading up to the finale, and those shows are live. And so basically what that schedule looks like is day one of our schedule is Wednesday, and we get the material, we learn it in the morning, we shoot reality that day with the contestant and their coach, right? So those are typically fairly long days. That's a Wednesday. Thursday we have second rehearsals where that's just the band, no cameras, with the contestant. And it's like a kind of a review. Like, here's what we did yesterday, here's what we worked out with, you know, here's what Kelly thought you should do with this arrangement. Here's what we should do. Let's just, you know, blow through it a couple times. We'll be good. And so we go to second rehearsals on Thursday. Friday we go to the recording studio and we record the iTunes version that's either going to be, you know, released or that streams on the iTunes, you know, voice radio channel or whatever, that you can go and pick up if you loved, you know, Kennedy Holmes's rendition of Confident, or whatever. So Thursday is our second rehearsal. Friday we go to the studio and record. Saturday typically is all day on stage at Universal doing camera and lighting rehearsals and getting audio all dialed in for Monday's show.
Right.
And then Sunday is basically the same thing all day as Saturday for Tuesday's show.
Wow.
Monday come in, dress rehearsal in the morning,
Incredible.
Break, do the show that night. Tuesday come in, dress rehearsal in the morning, break, show that night.
Now we're talking about 10 to 14 hour days. At this point.
At the worst, but sometimes lately they've been slightly more humane. But 10 hours is a fair average for a day.
Amazing.
We have outliers that end up being longer. I just mentioned to you earlier that, you know, we had Thanksgiving Day off, but that comes in the middle of when our work schedule demands 7 days a week of work. So for us to get Thursday Thanksgiving off, it means that the following Friday we do twice as much work. So that could easily be like a 15, 16-hour day.
So this is perfect. Business acumen, what are some of the things that you've learned over the years that, you know, that you've applied to really...
I've never had a manager or an accountant. I've always just felt, for this is just me personally. I've known people who have managers. I've known people who have agents. I've known people who have accountants, and it's important and it works for them. For me, in terms of ever having had a manager, I've never been in a situation where I felt like a manager could do more for me than I could accomplish myself. I got a buddy of mine. I used to work with a buddy named Tommy, and Tommy said all managers are the same. He said, you know what? When you're popular, they can all get you work, and when you're not, they all suck. You know what I mean? And you know, he's oversimplifying, but there's an extent to where, sure, it's like, okay, you're U2's manager. Like, how hard is your job? Like, everybody wants U2 everywhere all the time. Like, what are you doing, right? Conversely, you know, right? Conversely, you're a completely unheard of, you know, band, whatever. it's like having a manager doesn't mean you ascend to being
That's
U2
right.
the next day. I mean,
That's right.
So for me, I mean, a band isn't a great example, but for me, I've never had a manager for that reason, and I've never. And then the other thing too is I'm the kind of person who. I like things done a particular way, and so I feel like it would take me so long to teach someone. Like I do all my social media,
Yes.
you know, and part of the reason, and that's
Same here.
It's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword.
It takes a lot of time,
It takes a lot of time,
dedication, you know, but-
and it means that things don't happen as fast. For me. Like
That's
right
right.
now, just to be sort of myopic for a moment. I really enjoy putting up these Nate Morton drum cams, which are these behind the scenes sort of GoPro,
they're
videos that I've been putting up.
Yeah.
I haven't put up one in ages because that was a situation where someone was actually doing that for me, and they were, and they're no longer working with me, and so now I've got to learn how to do it. And so that's kind of what I mean. Like I haven't.
It's a learning curve. Yeah.
I want to take over the mantle and actually learn to do that.
Sure.
But it's like, you know, I got video editing software, and like I opened it up for the first time on my computer, and I was like, wait, what?
I know.
So I'm gonna have to like learn it. You know.
Do that.
But so that's the downside of trying to do it all
right.
myself.
That's right.
But ultimately, I think it will be better because, as I said, in the long run, you know, I think it would be harder for me to explain to someone what I want it to be, and it'll be frustrating for them.
Right.
You know.
I totally get it. No,
Right.
well said.
So,
Well said.
I do. The one thing that I enjoy doing though too is like in terms of being my own social media person. I remember someone sent me an email once, and it said, "Dear Nate Morton," and then it said in parentheses, "or whoever answers his emails."
Right.
You know, and then went on to say what they were saying. And I wrote them back, and I said, "It's me." I said, "I'm not sitting, you know, in a corner office of Nate Morton Enterprises downtown LA. Like, no, it's me sitting in my little Garudio. I call it my Garudio because it's my garage."
Man, Nate, this has been such a treat, man. Just to close this episode,
Yeah.
perhaps one of your more memorable moments that you could just recall.
From the show?
Yeah, or just with a celebrity type artist that you
Sure.
say, wow.
I share this quite a bit with people. It's always fun to meet and discover just how nice some of these literally icons are. So we're doing the show, and I'm setting up. The drums are downstage, which basically means I'm not on the main stage kit, but I'm downstage to perform with an artist. And whatever I'm doing, I'm tuning or I'm moving something, and I kind of just feel this sort of presence kind of standing over my shoulder. And I turn and I look, and this little, you know, petite figurine of a woman says, "Oh, don't mind me, drummer man. I just wanted to come over and introduce myself. I'm Dolly Parton." Like, she, right?
Right.
And it doesn't get any bigger.
No.
Right? She's an icon of icons, and she took the time to come over and be like, "I just want to introduce myself." And we've had, you know, or I've worked with artists who are not nearly at that level, that don't treat you with that level of respect or that, you know what I mean?
Kindness, yeah.
Well, exactly. So that really meant a lot, and that will always,
awesome.
I will never forget that. You know,
That's
and she's not the only one. We've had others.
Sure,
you know, we've had others. Joe Walsh being on the show was rad. He was so rad, and he was just so man. He was meeting grumpy musicians is always funny to me because I'm like, you're a musician. Like, how are you grumpy? He just had so much joy. Just play. You know,
awesome, man.
It's great. So, like I said, they're not the only two. Those two, you know, pop into mind.
So could I wrap that up as your pearl of wisdom here? Don't be grumpy if you're a musician. What do you got to be grumpy for, right?
You know what? In my case, that's what I think about. I mean, my eyes pop open every morning, and I'm like, I get to go and hit drums today.
That's right.
You know.
Let me ask you a question, because there's a lot of people that are listening, or maybe I think perhaps you've experienced this. I know I have.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you're in the valley, when you don't have gigs, when the phone's not ringing?
Absolutely.
You know, what is it that gets you through that?
I had a buddy say, my buddy Tony DiAugustine, outstanding drummer, lives in New York City. And at the time, he lived out here, and I was just moving here. And I said, "Tony, what's the hardest thing about being a professional musician?" And he said, "Developing a balance," which, by the way, is one of my favorite terms. And I said, "A balance between what?" And he said, a balance between everything. And at the time, right. See, you're of an age where, or of a level of experience where you get that. And at the time, I didn't. I was like, what do you mean about everything, Tony? I don't understand.
Youth is truly wasted on the young.
Completely. And as I've gotten older, I've realized more and more, it's like a balance between, for example, gigs you love versus gigs that pay the bills better. A balance between, being busy and earning a living, but having no time to spend it, or no time to enjoy the fact that you're earning a living, or not having, having time off, and balancing that with the mindset of how am I going to pay my bills?
Not having income.
So it's all a balance, and so as I've gotten older, I've tried to develop that balance. So I've been so fortunate and so just blessed in recent history to have this ongoing, gig.
That's awesome.
But before that, you have to balance the hustle with also, trying to take some time and enjoy the fact that you actually do have time to take your kid to the park, or time to sit and get a Subway sandwich with your 6-year-old. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's not easy, and you sort of have to trust that the things that you're doing, will ultimately lead to work.
Right.
And you have to keep doing those things while at the same time, like I said, sort of enjoying the fact that you do have a little bit of time. I found that especially with touring. When I would tour, obviously touring, while you're only on stage, whatever you are, 45 minutes set a night, or an hour and a half set a night, or 2 hours set a night, you're gone 24 hours. Like,
that's right.
You know what I mean? You're not getting paid to just be on the stage. You're getting paid to be away from home 24 hours of that day.
Sure.
So I found that when I toured, in breaks, between gigs, I had to really make myself appreciate the fact that I was home and really just do all that home stuff, because I know that when the next call comes, I'm gone, and I don't get to do it. So, yeah.
That's truly, and actually, that's a great way to end, because it's about balance. And I appreciate you sharing and reminding us of that term and what it really means, because we need to hear it, man.
Yeah, no, and it's hard. I think that's what I try to strive for, and you don't always achieve it.
That's right. Are you a what's next type of person, or are you just riding the wave as it's here?
Historically, I've been a what's next type of person, because we do sort of have to be that way a little bit to an extent. Recently, I've been, like I said, really fortunate to do this ongoing show situation. So for me, the what's next is at the moment less about what's the next gig to do, and more about, the what's next being cultivating my social media.
There you go.
Being able to set my room up so that I can start shooting some drum videos in my room that I can share with people.
Excellent.
Completing work on this Fraud Prophets
the album
band, this album, and looking forward to that. So those are the what's next for me. But then, even outside of that, funnily enough, the other what's nexts are like the next tournament that I'm taking my 12-year-old tennis player, Lachlan, to go and play. He had a lesson yesterday. I'm looking at his backhand and I'm going, yeah, it's getting there. Like things like that, It's like I've been very, very, very fortunate to, in many ways, accomplish so many things that I wanted to accomplish when I was in high school or in college. And so now I'm sort of turning my setting my sights on helping others around me accomplish the things that they want to accomplish.
That's beautiful. Nate, this has been awesome, dude. You are the epitome of a career musician, bro.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad that you think so.
Absolutely. I know so.
Man, Nate's humility just speaks volumes. I mean, think about it, everybody. We all dream about a gig like that on TV on a consistent basis. And for him to be in that position and to be so humble and cool, down to earth and self-aware, there's something to be said for that. Many thanks to Nate for sharing his insight, wisdom, experience, and everything else on this podcast. We are grateful. And hey, do me a favor, everybody. A musical one, that is. Subscribe to The Career Musician. Leave a review. Tell me what you want to hear. Tell me who you want to hear from. Don't forget to check us out on the socials: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, this and that, everywhere else, all of the podcast platforms. Until next time, rock and roll, baby.
Thank you for tuning in to The Career Musician. Please click the subscribe button and share The Career Musician podcast on your social media feeds.
I'm just a nomad, nowhere man, writing the songs in this one-man band. A nomad.